Hello, Culers, it's Pablo here, and welcome back to Barca Universal, and welcome to a very, very special video on the channel today. As you can see, I'm joined by Samuel Marsden from ESPN predominantly, but, I'm sure a lot of you guys know him, very, very famous journalist from Barcelona, very reliable too. And it's an absolute pleasure to have him on the channel today. So, Sam, please do introduce yourself to everyone here.
Hey, Pablo, thanks for having me on. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I am Sam Marsden. I think Pablo's done a pretty good job of introducing me. Based out here in Barcelona for 8 years now, I guess. Maybe you lose track of time when you're in Barcelona. You're just having so much fun. And yeah, predominantly writing for ESPN, wrote for loads of people in the past, also do bits and pieces for Diario Sport. And yeah, have a podcast, Siempre Positivo, as well, with Rick Sharma and Joan Martí, a couple of colleagues at Sport.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for that intro. I will just pop Sam's Twitter in the description down below and his links to anything, because as he said there, he has the podcast as well, which is very good with some top journalists too. So guys, feel free to go and check out all of his stuff in the comments down below. But now that we've got Sam here, it'd be rude not to ask him some questions about Barcelona, and I hope I'm not going to be asking some questions that you guys will find interesting and that we get, some interesting stuff from. So I wanted to start really by asking you about Ronald Koeman. Of course, we've known for about a month now that Koeman was going to be staying as Barcelona coach for the upcoming season. Pre-season almost starts today. The players are back out on the pitch as we're recording this. And it kind of looked like towards the end of La Liga that perhaps Koeman wasn't going to be the coach of all the results and the way Barcelona lost La Liga. And it almost, looked like a bit of a disaster. But Laporta has stayed with him. He's kept him at the club. And I kind of wanted to ask you in terms of what happened there. Did Laporta want someone else and then have to settle for Ronald Koeman? Or how did all of that kind of come about with the Koeman staying situation?
Yeah, I don't think it's any secret that Joan Laporta was not 100% convinced on keeping Ronald Koeman on. Obviously, he didn't say a lot during the presidential campaign. He kind of wanted to give a little bit of continuity to Koeman and to the team. And then what happened when he did eventually sort of take charge, March, April time, I guess, was when Barca were on that good run. They won the Copa del Rey. They went 19 games unbeaten in La Liga. And at that point, sort of, during the election campaign, even though he hadn't spoken about, he had sounded out some alternatives, maybe alternatives that would never have happened, like he liked Julian Nagelsmann, for example, but he obviously went to Bayern, would have been very, very costly in terms of that release clause that he had. It also would perhaps never have been an option, but that just as an anecdote into, what was going through Laporta's mind, that he was sort of open to other sort of coaches, other ideas if things didn't work out with Koeman. Koeman then obviously did well with that run, won the Copa del Rey, but then Laporta was really, really angry. I think he's even said it himself in an interview that he was just really disappointed with how Barca chucked the league away at the end of the season. That loss to Granada at home, and then it sort of spiraled from there, the draw with Atletico, and then obviously sort of it was gone by that point, but then the Levante game, and then it was already over really by the time they lost to Celta Vigo, and that sort of led to Laporta to again sort of activate, the search for a replacement. I think the thing was there was very few replacements on the market. And the money situation obviously tied into it as well. Koeman would have been due a payoff. He would have had to sort of factor that in. And obviously Barca's, we'll come on to it, but the financial situation is not good. I don't think it's any secret. I don't think there's anyone left in the world that doesn't know about Barcelona's situation. So these were all things that played into the final decision and him deciding to stick with Koeman. I think, the players are happy enough with Koeman. I don't think there would have been an outcry if he'd left, but it was something that, they're comfortable with him. He's got a good relationship with the heavyweights, I guess you would say, of the dressing room in terms of, Messi, Piqué and those guys. But also he's been willing to play younger players, obviously. I guess anyone with what we've seen over the last year throwing Pedri in is a no-brainer. But at the time, I remember when him playing Pedri so much at the start of the season, and then Pedri starting the Clásico, and it was like a big surprise. So Koeman's obviously been prepared to make those decisions with ILAIX coming in as well. So Laporta decided to stick with him in the end, just mainly because of those reasons, the cost of replacing him, the lack of alternatives. The cost obviously a major factor. If there was an outstanding, obvious candidate that was at a cost, maybe he would have done it, maybe he wouldn't have. I guess it would have depended on that. And I guess the question everyone wonders is why Xavi? And we don't really have a definitive answer on why not Xavi yet. If it's just that Laporta doesn't feel he's ready yet, or if there's something a little bit more at play with him perhaps being a little bit put out, shall we say, with, you know, Xavi's direct involvement with the Victor Font campaign, and that being such a clear plan for Victor Font, even though Xavi obviously during the campaign not spoke in favour of both of them, but didn't sort of lean either way. Didn't explicitly say, look, I'm only part of Font's campaign. He said, look, I've worked with Font for a while on this project, but I also like Laporta, have a good relationship with him. So I don't know if there's something there, if that's a reason for delaying it, or if it's just Laporta simply doesn't feel he's quite ready for the job yet.
Okay. Thanks for that. Very, very interesting answer there on all the sort of the reasons that Laporta had to factor in, I suppose, as to why Koeman continued. You did touch on it, though, the financial situation. You know, it would be rude not to ask about it, because that is, you know, what everyone is talking about at Barcelona right now. I do feel as if it's something that's kind of been in the running now for quite some years, but it's kind of hit the press now, hasn't it, with Laporta back as president. He's found out that, well, you know, this is absurd. We can't really go any further. How bad is Barcelona's financial situation is what I wanted to ask you. And what are Joan Laporta and his board of directors going to have to do to rectify it this summer? And how long is it almost going to take for Barcelona to be able to get back on their feet financially? So, you know, how many players are going to have to go? Are drastic measures going to have to be taken? And almost how bad is it?
Yeah, it's a hard question to answer, because I guess there are so many facets at play in terms of the financial situation. Simply put, Barca, I mean, I'm sure everyone listening will know this, but Barca are a club, you know, in effect ran by the members. They don't have outside backing, outside sort of money coming into the club per se. Obviously, there are sponsors and stuff like that. And they've obviously been generating the biggest revenue in football for the last few years. But what they'd also been doing was spending the most money in football. And they'd been sort of really, really pushing their limits in terms of spending. I was on a call with Javier Tebas last week, and he sort of explained, you know, why Barca are suffering so much more than other clubs. And it's basically because obviously there's a lot of talk about these spending limits that the Liga clubs have now, and Barca's was pre-pandemic of over 600 million euros, and other clubs were sort of, you know, 400, 500 million if you look at Real Madrid, or the sort of medium clubs like Valencia, Athletic Bilbao and stuff were more sort of 150, 100 million or whatever. But Barca was 600 million, but they weren't just with the biggest spending limit, they were also maxing their spending limit. A lot of those clubs don't actually max their spending limit, but Barca were completely living within, you know, spending every penny that they got. So when the pandemic happened, that was why they sort of suffered a lot more than other clubs, because they didn't have any room to maneuver. Obviously, the debt, the official debt in the last accounts was 1.2 billion euros. The gross debt, that is, the net debt was lower. Obviously, they're sort of due money from player sales and stuff and whatnot. But it is an alarming figure. I don't think it's as alarming as it perhaps sounds. Laporta's already taken moves to reduce the debt in a way, or to spread it out, to refinance the debt, I guess is the term. So he's got that 525 million loan, which means they can make sort of short-term debt repayments now, and sort of spread that money that they will now owe to Goldman Sachs over the course of the next 15 years. So it just staggers the way they have to pay the debt back. So that sort of helps in the short term, and it should help increase the spending limit, maybe a little bit, maybe not. I don't know how it quite works with the La Liga economic controls. So that's the first step they've taken. And then the next step is to reduce revenue and to reduce the wage bill, and to find new sources of revenue, whether it's, you know, new sponsorship deals, whether it's selling a percentage of Barca corporate, whether it's player sales. They need to bring in money, and they need to reduce the wage bill, which is what they're working on at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of reducing the wage bill, I suppose, you know, to name a few names, surely the most likely players that would help do that are the likes of Samuel Umtiti, Miralem Pjanic and Felipe Coutinho. You know, I think we've heard, it's no secret almost, as you said, that Barcelona do want to get rid of these sorts of players. Would you expect these guys to be able to find a way out of the club this summer, or is it still so difficult for Barcelona to get these players out? Of course, you know, we know that they gave almost the freedom card, is it, to Umtiti and Pjanic, and they rejected it. So are these sorts of players on huge salaries that Barcelona evidently need to get rid of? You know, is that going to be a possibility this summer or not?
Yeah, I mean, each of those, every case and every player has its own complications, even going beyond those three. I think of those three, Pjanic is the one closest to leaving. There's a lot of interest in him, you know, across Europe, really, Italy, England, Germany, France. But, you know, the complications with Pjanic is you can't just sort of sell him for 10 million because he's a 60 million signing on the books, and how the amortization works and stuff on that. You can maybe get rid of his wage bill and stuff. So that's something that needs to be worked out. But I think the Pjanic situation is one that will be quickly resolved. I mean, he's back in Barcelona at the moment for pre-season, and maybe it will rumble on a little bit, but he wants it sorted sooner than later. I think he's got a sour taste after last season. We obviously saw an Instagram post where he wasn't particularly happy with the playing time he got under Koeman. And it's a strange one because I thought maybe he would have an important role. I thought could be. I mean, the deal was obviously a weird, strange deal to be frowned upon. But I thought once Pjanic was here in Barcelona, I thought he would have done maybe not better than he has done because he's not had the chances, but he would have had a bigger role. So that's one which I can see can unravel quite quickly. There could be. I wouldn't be surprised if there was news this week or next week. The MTT situation is a little bit different because he's a little bit more reluctant to leave, and his salary is huge. Obviously signed in 2018 when sort of Manchester United were threatening, or there were rumours that they could pay the release clause. Barca rushed that deal through at a time when they were just paying more and more bigger wages, and it's going to be very, very difficult for a club to assume that salary that Umtiti's earning at Barcelona. And obviously there's going to be doubts about clubs who want him as well, because even though he's been injury-free really this year since returning from the knee problem, he's not really been tested. He's played very little football. How's his knee going to hold up? I mean, there are people that you speak to that think he's just completely shot and his knee will never allow him to play at the top level. And if you think of some of the games he played for Barca, he came in and on the ball he looked good, but then there were mistakes. I mean, obviously you cast your mind to that Seville game and little moments like that where he sort of, as they say here, he appeared in the image of the mistakes or the goals.
Yeah.
So finding a club to take him is difficult. I think with Umtiti, they'll have to probably take a loan and pay part of his wages and just be happy to get any percentage off. And Coutinho is a difficult one because Coutinho is open to going somewhere, but obviously his agent Kia is, a shrewd agent, a shrewd businessman, so he's not just going to take him anywhere for a small wage or anything. There's lots of interest, but there's the added injury with Coutinho, so he's just coming back from that knee injury, so there will be doubts, about, do clubs want to take on this huge salary for someone who's maybe not fully fit? So we'll see what happens with him. He'll come and do pre-season with Barca and get fit again and then see what happens. It's not ruled out that he could stay at Barca. Koeman's always said that he likes Coutinho. There's obviously a few factors at play, and the injury, the wage, the 100 games sort of thing, and whether Barca would have to pay more money for him when he reaches 100 games. Coutinho is an open case and could go anywhere really. And then you've got the guys like Neto, Martin Braithwaite. I think they're now that Elenia's gone and the rest of the squad players are gone. I think they're the main sort of most likely players to find departures or to be moved on before Barca have to start making some perhaps more difficult decisions on other players.
Interesting. And I suppose we should talk about the main man, the most interesting decision, Lionel Messi. We've heard, for some months now that everything's going well and that things are progressing well with his new contract at Barcelona. Can you give us any updates or any, signs as to where that's going? Is it still looking good on the Messi front, essentially?
I think Messi stays at Barcelona still. I mean, I know there are people perhaps now, what's the date today? July the 11th, perhaps July 12th, or perhaps, 12 days after his contract expired, starting to perhaps get a little bit worried. I think all the signs that we've seen, everything that Joan Laporta has said suggests that it's going to happen. There's almost an agreement with the player, pending a few details. The main thing is just, working the accounts so that it fits in within that La Liga spending limit, the cap. That's the main thing, juggling that stuff around. Once a couple more players have gone or transfer fees have come in, perhaps it will be possible. I don't know. The clubs or La Liga aren't given the exact numbers. So Barcelona's spending limit, I touched on it before, was over 600 million euros. In January of this year, it was 347 million euros. But we don't know how much it's going to be this summer. I asked Tebas and he didn't say, and the club haven't revealed. Obviously, it fluctuates throughout the summer. I mean, if Barca were to sell someone for 100 million, obviously the spending limit would increase. If they weren't, then it wouldn't increase. So there's room to manoeuvre, but we don't know what base they're starting from. So it depends on sorting that out, really. I mean, I think, there's not really any more news than that the delay is just, Barca are working on these exits to make sure everything fits in.
Okay, and I suppose talking on exits, there's also been some rumours that for Messi to stay at the club, Barcelona will need to get rid of Antoine Griezmann, the second highest earner at the club behind Lionel Messi. Is there any updates on the Griezmann situation, essentially? Is it possible for Griezmann to remain at Barcelona alongside Lionel Messi, or is it almost looking like now, well, Griezmann's going to have to move on if we want Messi to stay just because of the financial situation? You know, what's it looking like on the Griezmann front, essentially?
Yeah, I think even looking beyond the financial situation, you look at the squad that Barca have got. They've signed Memphis Depay and Sergio Aguero now.
Yep.
They've got Lionel Messi. They've got Ansu Fati. They've still got to do something with Felipe Coutinho.
Yep.
You know, they've got still got to do something with Martin Braithwaite. There's obviously Ousmane Dembele, but he's injured at the moment. So even beyond the financial situation, these bodies in attack don't fit. So, I mean, we've touched on Coutinho and Braithwaite. They're the obvious candidates to go. But Griezmann is probably actually the easiest solution in terms of, you know, he has a market. You know, there's going to be clubs that do want Griezmann, and he's got a huge wage. And, you know, he's not... I think he's probably been over-criticised during his time at Barcelona, but he's also not been a 120 million sort of star signing, if you think back to what was perhaps expected of him. So there's probably somewhere in the middle the truth on Griezmann's time at Barcelona. But yeah, he's just emerged as the obvious candidate, I guess. I mean, before it was perhaps Ousmane Dembele with the contract situation and the interest in him. Perhaps if he hadn't got injured, we wouldn't be seeing so much of Griezmann perhaps being pushed out. But obviously the Dembele situation with him out of contract and injured in 4 months means he's got very little sale value now if the club were to try and move him on this summer. So he's probably going to have to stay now because no one's going to sign an injured Dembele, and then we'll see what happens with his contract situation, which has propelled Griezmann into the limelight. The club are in a difficult position as well because Griezmann would obviously prefer to play in Spain, but after everything that happened with Luis Suarez last summer, I don't think Barca really want to send Griezmann back to Atletico and then see, you know, Atletico with Griezmann and Suarez win the league again. I think they would be absolutely hammered. So there's a little bit of hesitancy with Atletico. Also, Atletico financially could never take on the wage of Griezmann again. I mean, they obviously paid him a big wage before, but that was before the pandemic. Their spending's obviously been hit a little bit as well, not as much as Barca, but they wouldn't be able to take on that wage, whether he would take a cut or whatnot. Maybe that would be a solution that Barca have to accept if it comes to it later in the summer and they're still struggling financially. I think ideally they'd have an English club come in for him and maybe sign him. And they're the ones with money. I don't know whether the reports of any interest in England are true. The only thing is that, you know, Barca are obviously receptive to any interest in a lot of players, not just Griezmann, just because of the situation. I mean, I think they would listen to... There's very few players that they wouldn't at least listen to an offer for. I mean, you're looking at sort of, you know, De Jong, Pedri, and then Messi, and then perhaps the rest they'd listen to offers to if someone came in. As stupid as it sounds, I remember the first time someone at the club said that last summer, and I was like, it just sounds ridiculous. But like when you see the financial situation, it makes sense. Like they can't just ignore these things. If someone wants to pay for these players, then perhaps it would provide a solution. But yeah, Griezmann's obviously the one who's fallen front and centre now because of his wage, because of the bodies in attack, because he's not quite clicked as expected with Barca.
Interesting. I suppose we'll quickly touch on this. There's obviously been rumours of him returning to Atletico. You've kind of said there that the club want to avoid a Luis Suarez situation, and it would be worrying having Suarez up front and Griezmann playing off him. That would almost be a disaster for Barcelona if you think about it like that. But we did hear rumours of a potential Griezmann-SAÚL swap deal with Atletico, and I suppose, is that sort of thing possible? You know, was there any truth to that, and would Barcelona be almost open to that sort of swap deal with Atletico, or maybe even a different club in England, say?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any truth to the SAÚL one. Obviously, Barca have had a long-standing interest in SAÚL. I'm not quite sure what's happened with SAÚL over the last year. He seems to have gone off the boil a little bit. I didn't really notice it at first, but then sort of it has become a thing, and obviously Atletico are prepared to let him go. But I think maybe he just needs a new change. I think maybe he's a player who's perhaps suited to a different system, and perhaps all those years of playing for Cholo, I think he's perhaps ready to be a little bit more free, play with a little bit more freedom elsewhere. Obviously, he's been linked with Liverpool, now with Barca. In terms of a swap deal with Griezmann, I don't know if that has been spoken about or not. I know Barca and Atletico have very good institutional relations. I know that Laporta is open to swap deals. I mean, I think in the past, the swap deal was almost like, I think you're talking rubbish now. But after the especially post-pandemic, but even before Barca started to do these sort of mutually beneficial swap deals, I mean, we had Dillerson and Neto even, I guess that would have been 2019, was it? Or 2019. 2019, and then 2020 we had the Pjanic Arthur one, where they're not technically swap deals, but they they help the clubs financially. So I'm sure it's something that could happen. I don't know whether it could happen with City or Liverpool in England if either of them wanted Griezmann. But just going back to Saul, I mean, it is also true that Barca and especially Koeman want another central midfielder. Ideally, I mean, they tried to sign Ronald, and obviously that didn't happen. Ideally, Pjanic would leave, and they'd be able to bring in another midfielder who's to Koeman's liking. Because I guess if you look at the situation, you've got Busquets, you've got Pedri, and you've got De Jong. That's the first choice three, and then beyond there, Ricky Puig and ELAIX Moriba, both players that I like, but, we still untested over the course of a season at the very top level. Do you want, Frankie de Jong gets injured for the season and you're having to throw ELAIX in? Could be a great thing, could be the making of them, could be fantastic. But then you've got two 18-year-old midfielders in Pedri and ELAIX. And I think they need a bit more of a cushion in midfield. Interesting.
Well, since you mentioned him there, ELAIX Moriba, we're hearing that there's a potential contract talk going on there that the club would like to renew him. I think he would like to renew as well, but things haven't really progressed so far. And obviously he hasn't been called up with the first team to pre-season as of yet. So there seems to almost be a bit of a standoff there, and Barcelona saying, either stick with your salary or get out because of the financial situation we're in. But can you give us any updates on the ELAIX Moriba contract front, essentially, and how that one's progressing?
Yeah, it's nothing new. If we go back, is it 2 years when he first turned 16, you can sign a professional deal in Barcelona. There was sort of, Barca thought they'd lost him at one point. Sort of his contract was up in, I guess it would have been the June of 2 years ago, maybe maybe this was the summer of 2019, and they thought he was going, I can't remember where, maybe to Manchester City or to an English club. They thought that deal was done because negotiations just hadn't sort of moved on with his agents. In the end, he ended up staying. And it was a similar sort of standoff. They were prepared to go to sort of similar lengths. And I think we're just in a similar situation now. I think it's a normal contract situation. I would say not to be worried about. I think they will come to an agreement in the end. The player absolutely, of course, wants to stay at Barcelona. What a 2021 he's had so far, breaking into the first team, the minutes he's getting at Ronald Koeman. Yeah. The only way that he would want to leave is if he didn't see progression to the first team. But I think he's seen that that's absolutely possible. And with Koeman staying on, he knows that the coach is going to give him more chances. So there's absolutely no reason for him to go elsewhere. It'd be a huge gamble at 18. There's probably no top club in Europe that could guarantee him the playing time that Barca and Koeman can. So I think that will get sorted. But like we say, everything comes back to the financial situation. I don't think Barca want to sell ELAIX, but if with a year on his contract to go, a big English club was prepared to pay a fee for him, they would perhaps have to cut into it. I don't think that's anything to do with why he's not training in the contract negotiations at the moment. But if an English club were prepared to sort of test Barca's resolve, then it would perhaps be interesting.
Okay, interesting. I want to move on to the fullbacks actually, because I think with Jordi Alba now as the only left back at the club, Junior Firpo moved on to Leeds. There was perhaps, some rumours that Barcelona would look to bring in a left-back like a José Luis Gallá or Marcos Alonso from Chelsea. But what we've been hearing is that perhaps Barcelona will go with 4 fullbacks, but 3 right-backs to almost cover both sides, and then perhaps, bring up and down Alejandro Balde from the B team. I wanted to almost ask for a few updates from you on the contract, not the contract front, on the fullback front, in terms of, Emerson and Dest look like they're set to stay. So does Jordi Alba. But is Sergio Alberto someone who's on the market for Barcelona? And are Barcelona still in the market themselves to bring in a left-back?
I think the fullback situation is something that is relatively set at the moment, but could change up until the final day of the transfer market, depending on what happens. As you say, as things stand, you've got Emerson and Dest who will compete for that right-back spot. You've got Sergio Alberto who can also play there, can also play central midfield, can also play left-back perhaps. I think Dest will be the main... I think we'll see Dest play left back quite a bit when Alba's not available or when Alba needs resting. Dest played there a few games last season. I think he had a little run when Alba was injured. I think maybe his first sort of 3 or 4 or 5 Barca games were at left back, and he's perfectly fine there. I think he's a perfectly good substitute. I don't think we'll see much of Alejandro Balde at all. I think he's a little bit too soon for him. He had injuries last season. He didn't play a lot for the B team. So the most important thing for him this season is to play regularly with the B team. I can't see him playing much for the first team at all with the fullbacks that they've got. But yeah, if things change, if there was an offer for Emerson, Barca could sell. They could perhaps then have, Dest. We're back to square one. It's not a great position to be in. I think it's going to be good to have Emerson and Dest because I think going to push each other on. But Barca could be tempted because of the financial situation. They could sell Sergio Roberto because he's only got a year left on his deal. He's also on probably a bigger wage than a player of his caliber commands. And then if any of those go, at the moment, it doesn't look like Sergio Roberto or Emerson will leave, but it could happen. And then perhaps they'll be back in the market for a left back. With Valencia, it would be interesting with Jose Luis Gaya. Valencia has shown an interest in Martin Braithwaite, whether that could be some sort of swap deal. I don't think, with Alba staying, I don't think they should really go all out for a left back. I think they should prioritise other areas, especially with the money. Regardless of your thoughts of Jordi Alba, obviously some people are critical of him defensively. I think he's still a good left back in the end. He's very important for Barca in the attacking phase, his relationship with Messi. And I think if you're spending money on a left back, it's probably a waste of money, because if Alba's going to play. But yeah, it's an open situation. I don't have any confirmation on the Marcos Alonso stuff. I don't know what his situation is, if he's out of contract or if he'd command a fee. Gaia is obviously one that's for a long time been linked, and who Ramon Planes likes and the club like, but paying a fee and his wages are unlikely when they've got Alba. So unless it was a swap deal and another fullback was sold somewhere else, then it doesn't look like it's one that's going to happen this summer.
Okay, and I'll ask you one final one almost then to wrap this one up. If Barcelona were to get in some funds, say if Barcelona were to move on to some players, what do you think are the areas of the field that Barcelona would look to invest in? Would it be another attacker? Would it be a left back that we just spoke about? Would it be a centre back? Would it be a central midfielder? Almost, it's the final question. Where could you see Barcelona spending some more money, or even just bringing in another player in the transfer market to finish off the window?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I feel like the answer could be like they just still need to sign in every position. Yeah. I would probably say that the least important right now is another forward, even though Koeman wants another sort of number 9 profile. Yeah. I think with Aguero, and obviously there are question marks over Aguero because he's not played a lot this season, and he's sort of he's 33 or turning 33, and then Ansu Fati could also play as a sort of a 9, if you will, but then there are question marks over his fitness. So I think next summer, we'll see Barca go for a forward, depending on how they recover post-pandemic, how Laporta does, I think then. But in terms of now, like I just said, I guess left back wouldn't be a priority because you've got Jordi Alba, but that is, again, like the forward position, something that needs addressing next summer, if not before. The centre back and centre midfield, I think, is probably the area where they would need to strengthen. Again, it's not urgent. I mean, they've got a lot of bodies in defence, but I feel like they still need a defender. I mean, if you look at what they've got, they've got Piqué, who's 34, turns 35 this season, perhaps is not going to be what he was. He's on the way down. I mean, it's normal with age. I mean, I love Piqué. He's been fantastic. And he's probably underrated as a centre back, but you need to replace Piqué because he's going to be gone in two years max, probably. When he's 37, he's not going to be playing for Barca for a long time. And then you've just got a collection of young defenders, Araujo, Mingueza and Eric Garcia. And I like all three of them to different degrees, but they all have flaws. I think I see Mingueza at the moment, and he proved me wrong a lot last season because I never expected him to have the impact he had. But I think he's perhaps more of a squad player, someone who's brilliant backup across the back four, as opposed to someone who's going to command a centre-back position for Barca for the next 5 years. I think Araujo is imposing. I think he's brilliant. But in terms of the Barca situation, he still needs to improve a little bit in terms of bringing the ball out. I was going to say salida de balón, but bringing the ball out. And there's still areas to improve. There's sort of mixed reviews from people when you speak to about Araujo, people who really, really rate him and people who think that, he's completely overperforming. And then Eric Garcia, someone who I like as well. I mean, I think he had a good Euros for Spain. I mean, he's the perfect, but obviously came through the Messi. He knows exactly how Barca play. He's good on the ball. Defensively, I think he's perhaps, he doesn't have the attributes that Araujo has, the pace, the strength. Obviously, he's quick in the mind and he's intelligent and he reads the game. But, I thought, for example, in the Italy goal, perhaps for Spain, I thought he perhaps could have done better. Little moments like that, but he's young and he's not played for Manchester City. So perhaps Eric Garcia I think he is someone who could be a Barca defender, for the next starter for the next, 5-10 years. But then he's going to need someone alongside him, whether that could be Araujo. It's not going to be Samuel Umtiti, who the club needs to get rid of. It's not going to be Clement Lenglet, another player we've not actually spoken about. Yeah. The club would be open to offers for him. I've spoken to people close to Lenglet, and they've been very matter of fact that he's not going. There's been interest, and he's not interested in leaving. So, I mean, I don't think Lenglet is Lenglet is someone who for 85 minutes is a very handy defender, does everything quite well, quite good on the ball, quite tidy, but he's just crept in so many mistakes, and the list of sort of giving away penalties, handballs, clumsiness from last season was brutal. And then we saw for France when he came in against Switzerland, he was just nowhere for that first goal against Seferovic. So I feel like it's like a confidence thing now, and he's not going to be. I mean, he was never brought in to be a regular at Barca. He was brought in as like the third choice, and that first season he did really well and set the bar so high.
Yeah.
But I just think like if Barca could sell him and sign a new, I mean, I don't know who a centre back. They do need a centre back to replace Umtiti, Lenglet, and Piqué really, and then they do need another central midfielder as well. I mean, I think De Jong, Busquets, and it's funny to say that because Pedri and De Jong are probably the two best young midfielders in the world. I mean, they were both brilliant at the Euros. Busquets is like Piqué, obviously not as far down the line as Piqué, but slowly on the decline. Still good in the right situation, but in some games he will struggle. So Barca do need another central midfielder as well, I think, just to add a little bit of depth and security going into the season. So I think it would probably, I think if they had to sign one, I don't know if I'd say a centre back, or I'd probably say a central midfielder.
Yeah, that's interesting. That does almost seem like Koeman's priority, doesn't it? He really wanted Wijnaldum, and I think he still wants that. Well, I don't know, box-to-box midfielder, but that presence in midfield. And it's interesting that you mentioned there about centre-backs. It just does seem unlikely, I suppose, with the fact that Barcelona have got 6 now, including Umtiti. Even once Umtiti is sold on, if he is sold on, then there's still 5. And if Lenglet is adamant on not leaving, Barcelona are in a difficult position there, and it will be hard to bring in a defender. I think we'll wrap it up there, though. We had about half an hour chat now, I believe. I hope I asked all the right questions, guys, and I think we got some really good answers there. So thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks, Pablo. It's been a pleasure.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and it's been an absolute pleasure for me to be able to interview a journalist like Samuel Marsden today. And leave any of your thoughts in the comments down below, guys, and goodbye.